Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's July 5th. Today we celebrate the man remembered in the genus name for crepe myrtle. And we'll also learn about the botanist who served as the physician to George Washington. We celebrate the man remembered in the name of the largest flower in the world. And we also celebrate the practical gardener and journalist who helped change the English landscape from formal to much more relaxed and attainable for the masses. We honor the beautiful Rose, the queen of the garden, with today's poetry. And we grow that garden library with a book that shares age-old advice and tips for the garden. And then we'll wrap things up with the story of a botanist who wanted to make orchids possible to grow in the average man's garden. But first, let's catch up on some greetings from gardeners from around the world in today's curated news. Well, in my inbox this morning was a beautiful picture of Susan lilies from Lydia S. in St. Paul. These are absolutely stunning. The petals are orange with brush strokes of violet. They're truly one of the most beautiful lilies, and they're definitely one of my favorites. Then Jane in St. Paul sent a picture of Quentin Wynn's beautiful hanging garden. This is a garden that's on a fence, and the fence has been transformed thanks to these wonderful bottles that have now been repurposed into planters. The planters are staggered on the fence posts. There is a column of 5 followed by a column of 4, and each planter holds either vegetables or herbs. Wynn's vision for this garden is absolutely beautiful, and I'll put some pictures of this very innovative fence planter in the Facebook group for the show. Now, if you'd like to participate in the Gardener Greetings segment, all you have to do is send your garden pics or stories that you run across, birthday wishes, and so forth to Jennifer at thedailygardener.org. That's Jennifer at thedailygardener.org. And here's a quick reminder that if you want to listen to the show while you're at home, just ask Alexa or Google to play the Daily Gardener podcast. It's just that easy. Here's today's curated news. Up first is a quiz that was posted by Kew Gardens. The quiz is designed to help you determine how clued up you are on your flowers and to rate yourself as a flower whiz. This is a 15-question quiz that's kind of fun to do, something to add a little excitement to your time at home. And I thought I'd ask a few questions right now just to kind of pique your interest. Question number 1 is, what plant family does lavender belong to? Is it the rose, the mint, the pea family, or the daisy family? Another question is, what is the Japanese term for cherry blossom? Is it sakura, yukata, haiku, or shamisen? And then here's one last teaser for you. What is the national flower of Scotland? Is it the daffodil, the tulip, the thistle, or the hibiscus? Well, I won't keep you in suspense. The answer to the first question, what plant family does lavender belong to, is mint. It belongs to the mint family. And the Japanese term for cherry blossom is sakura. Finally, the national flower of Scotland is the thistle. Now, if you'd like to check out this post for yourself and finish the quiz and determine whether or not you're a flower whiz, just search for the term quiz the next time you're in the Facebook group for the show, and this post will pop right up. Now, yesterday, I wrote a post called Hamilton for Gardeners, and I thought I'd share it with you today on the show. Here it is. Like the rest of the world, the kids and I watched Hamilton on July 3rd. We loved it. And if you watch it, your gardener ears will delight to hear that Hamilton liked to garden. After his oldest son Philip is killed in a duel, Hamilton sings, "I spend hours in the garden. I walk alone to the store, and it's quiet uptown. I've never liked the quiet before." Then later, as Hamilton and his wife mourn their son and repair their marriage, the cast sings, "They are standing in the garden, Alexander, by Eliza's side." Toward the end of his life, Hamilton and his wife Eliza built a federal-style home they called the Grange in Upper Manhattan in modern-day Harlem. The Grange was no Monticello or Mount Vernon. It was a pleasant and modest home, and somehow it is fitting that the etymology of the word Grange means a barn. In 1802, as work was nearing completion on the Hamilton Grange, as it's referred to today, Hamilton made detailed notes regarding the Grange gardens, and he even sketched a layout for his flower bed. And it's a thrill for gardeners to see that Hamilton took the time to write a list for his garden. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? First on the list, transplant the fruit trees from the other side of the stable, then repair the fences behind the stable. He writes, "The sod and earth which were removed in making the walks may be thrown upon the grounds in front of the house, along with a few wagon loads of compost." Number 4 on the list was dig a ditch alongside the fruit garden and grove about 4 feet wide. Number 5, the gardener should begin planting raspberries in the orchard. He will go to Mr. John Delafield for a supply of the English sort, and if not sufficient, we'll add from our own and get some from our neighbors. Next up, he says, if it can be done in time, I would be happy if space could be prepared in the center of the flower garden for planting a few tulips, lilies, and hyacinths. The space should be an 18-foot circle, and there should be 9 of each type of flower. Then at the bottom of this page, Hamilton drew a diagram to show how he wanted his clock garden to be planted. And then finally, he said, I would also like some laurel planted along the edge of the shrubbery and around the clump of trees near the house, and also sweet briars and a few dogwood trees, not large, scattered along the margin of the grove would be very pleasant, but the fruit trees must be removed first. Hamilton's list made me chuckle because he ends with that comment about the fruit trees, which is kind of a full circle moment for him because that's how he started his list. You've got to transplant the fruit trees and move them to the other side of the stable. And in his mind, nothing can happen until that gets done. That has to get done first. That's the sequence in his mind. You know, a lot of times when I make a list, I do the exact same thing. I can start going off on all of these different tangents and ideas for the garden. But before any of that can happen, you have to put first things first. For Hamilton, in his garden, we have a little clue about one of the first steps that he had taken in his garden, and that was making the walks. And after he had made those paths, he saved the soil that he had dug. And I found that so interesting because I'm in the middle of setting up my garden here at the cabin, and I'm doing the same thing Hamilton did hundreds of years ago. I'm starting with my paths. And then finally, the last thing that made me chuckle about Hamilton's list is the fact that you can almost see him thinking out loud as he's writing this note. He starts out by saying, I'd like some laurel. And then the next thing you know, he's thinking about sweetbriars. And then before long, he's dreaming of dogwoods. And you can almost see the garden spring to life in this little list for his garden. And by the way, if you get a chance to check out this post, you'll see in there that I've included an image that shows Hamilton's diagram of his garden. It's a classic clock garden, and it's so cool because you can see the diagram, you can see his little abbreviations, little tiny circles where he wanted the plants to go, and then of course his wonderful handwriting, which is actually pretty easy to read. So that was really fun. Now, by December of that same year, Hamilton wrote to his friend Richard Peters, and he said, Dear Sir, a disappointed politician you know is very apt to take refuge in a garden. Of course, he's talking about himself. He continues, accordingly, I have purchased about 30 acres, 9 miles from town. I've built a house, planted a garden, and entered upon some other simple improvements. Now, in this same letter, he threw a little shade at someone he wasn't always so fond of, President Thomas Jefferson. And at the same time, he acknowledges his own lack of horticultural knowledge and experience. He wrote, in this new situation at the Grange, I'm as ill-fitted as Jefferson is to guide the helm of the United States. This line takes on extra meaning if you've seen Hamilton or if you get a chance to see it, because the musical does a great job of portraying this rocky relationship that Hamilton had with Jefferson. Now, for his garden at the Grange, Hamilton drew on the expertise of his botanist friend and family doctor, David Hosack. Hosack's Elgin Botanical Garden covered 20 acres, and he was a generous gardening mentor to Hamilton, giving him cuttings and seeds and tips. When Hamilton was shot by Aaron Burr, it was Hosack who tried in vain to save him. And today, Rockefeller Center stands on the site of Hosack's Botanical Garden. As for Hamilton's garden, there's one aspect that paid homage to his political life. He planted 13 American sweet gum trees to represent the original 13 colonies. And it turns out that the sweet gums were a gift from his old boss, George Washington. The Hamilton musical has such a poignant ending. And here's a heads up. You'd better have some Kleenex handy after the intermission. Hamilton's ambition was captured early in the show when he says, God help and forgive me. I want to build something that's gonna outlive me. After his life was cut short, his wife Eliza devoted the next 5 decades of her life to secure her husband's legacy. And when the cast memorably asks, Legacy, what is a legacy? Gardeners will delight in the botanically inspired response. It's planting seeds in a garden you will never get to see. Aw. Anyway, it's really, really good. It's totally worth the $6 or so monthly subscription fee to Disney Plus. And I'm so glad I got to watch it with the kids. That was really, really fun. All right, that's it for today's gardening news. Now, if you'd like to check out my curated news articles and original blog posts for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it with the listener community in the free Facebook group for the show. It's called the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or search for links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. On this day in 1759, the naturalist and director of the Swedish East India Company, Magnus von Lagerstrom, died. In his work, Magnus was a friend and patron of Carl Linnaeus. During his travels, he supplied Linnaeus with plants, and in return, Linnaeus named the genus for crepe myrtle after him. It's known as Lagerstromia. Now, before we get into the plant details of crepe myrtle, we need to talk about the spelling controversy. In the South, the spelling is crepe, as in crepe paper, C-R-E-P-E. This spelling supposedly came about because the flowers resemble crepe paper. But everywhere else, it's spelled crepe, like grape. So C-R-A-P-E. Now, botanists have recorded close to 50 known species of the crepe myrtle, and crepe myrtles are a member of the loosestrife family. Their size can vary greatly, from a foot to 100 feet tall. Crepe myrtles are tough, and they can put up with difficult growing conditions like high heat, humidity, basically what many parts of the country are putting up with right now. And that hardiness of crepe myrtles in sweltering conditions gives us a clue as to their origins. Crepe myrtles are native to the Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, Northern Australia, and parts of Oceania. In China, the crepe myrtle is known as the monkey tree. Crepe myrtles are slippery, which means the monkeys have a tough time climbing them. And the Chinese also call the crepe myrtle the tree of 100 days, in reference to the long bloom time. That's what gardeners especially appreciate about the crepe myrtle, the extraordinarily long bloom time. Once a crepe myrtle starts to bloom in the middle of summer, it will continue to produce blossoms well into fall. Medicinally, the crepe myrtle is used for constipation. The leaves, bark, and even the blossoms are high in fiber. And herbalists know how to make a purgative decoction with crepe myrtle leaves. And today is the anniversary of the death of the American doctor, professor, and naturalist Adam Kuhn, who died on this day in 1817. Adam was exceptionally well trained for his time. His father had been a physician, his parents were German immigrants, and Adam grew up in Germantown, Pennsylvania. At some point, his family sent him to Sweden, where he studied at Uppsala University. He's believed to be the only American student of Carl Linnaeus, and Linnaeus wrote to Adam's father with rare praise, saying, "Adam is unwearied in his studies and daily and faithfully studies materia medica with me. He has learned the symptomatic history of diseases in an accurate and solid manner. In natural history and botany, he's made remarkable progress." Linnaeus clearly liked Adam, and he named the plant Kunia, or Kunia eupatorioides, commonly known as false boneset, in Adam's honor. Adam began teaching at the medical school of the College of Philadelphia, where he became the first professor of medicine for the 13 colonies. And he's remembered for being the physician for George Washington. He's also recalled as a somewhat rigidly formal man. Some historical texts have used the word pompous to describe him. One doctor recalled Adam this way: "He was by far the most highly and minutely furnished specimen of old-school medicine I have ever beheld. He wore a fashionably curled and powdered wig. His breeches were black. He wore a long-skirted buff or white waistcoat. He carried a gold-headed cane and a gold snuff-box. His knee and shoe buckles were of the same metal. His footsteps were sternly and stubbornly regular, and he entered the sick room at a given minute and stayed a given time, and he never suffered deviation from his directions." Once a nurse asked, "Doctor, if the patient should desire toast, water, or lemonade, may he have it?" Adam would turn and reply with oracular solemnity, "I have directed weak sage tea. Good morning, madam." And today is the anniversary of the death of Sir Stamford Raffles, who died on this day in 1826. 8 years before he died, Raffles described the Arnold's Rafflesia, the largest flower in the world. He said, "The magnificent plants have no leaves, no roots, and no stem. The entire flower measures about a yard across and weighs about 15 pounds. And the Rafflesia flower lasts for only a few days before it withers and dies." The Rafflesia arnoldii, commonly called the corpse lily or the stinking corpse lily, is named to honor Raffles and his dear friend Dr. James Arnold, who was with him during the discovery of the plant on the island of Sumatra. Arnold was a surgeon, botanist, and a naturalist in his own right, but sadly he died shortly after seeing the bloom. The Rafflesia arnoldii was named in honor of both of them, Raffles and Arnold. The Rafflesia flower is still regarded as the largest in the world. And today is the birthday of the Irish practical gardener and journalist, the passionate William Robinson, who was born on this day in 1838. A horticultural powerhouse, Robinson helped change the English landscape from formal to much more relaxed and attainable for the masses. Robinson wrote, "The Medici Gardens in Rome offers clipped walls of green, formal walks, numerous statues, and the ever-present stone pine. It's difficult to imagine anything more monotonous or uninteresting than this type of garden." I always say of Robinson that his gardens were chill, but the man was hot, as in he was hot-tempered, opinionated, hoppin' and happening. He developed the practice of planting the herbaceous border, and he was an advocate for the wild garden. He wanted everyone to do their own thing in their own gardens. No need for a cookie-cutter approach or formality. And Robinson had an artistic mindset. He wanted people to be free to express themselves in their own way, in their own garden. He was clearly ahead of his time, as is evidenced by the fact that many of his ideas remain relevant and commonplace. In 1867, Robinson visited the gardens of France, and he came home to write his first gardening book. He called it Gleanings from French Gardens. I love that title. Now, Robinson's work and books brought him financial security, and by the age of 45, he had enough money to purchase the Elizabethan manor of Gravetye in Sussex, along with almost 200 acres of pasture and woodland. Now, Robinson became great friends with Gertrude Jekyll, and in 1896, Jekyll offered this summary of Robinson's impact on gardening. She wrote, "Thanks to William Robinson, we may see how best to use and enjoy the thousands of beautiful plants that have been brought to us by the men who have given fortune, health, and often life in perilous travel, that our gardens may be enriched and botanical knowledge extended. We cannot now, with all this treasure at our feet, neglect it and refuse it the gratefully appreciative use that it deserves." In Unearthed Words, today's selections are all about the queen of the garden, the rose. This first one's by the English poet and politician Andrew Marvell. "I have a garden of my own, but so with roses overgrown and lilies, that you would it guess to be a little wilderness." And here's a little verse from the English novelist Wilkie Collins from his book The Moonstone. "I haven't much time to be fond of anything, but when I have a moment's fondness to bestow, most times the roses get it. I began my life among them in my father's nursery garden, and I shall end my life among them if I can. Yes, one of these days, please God, I shall retire from catching thieves and try my hand at growing roses." And here's one from the newspaper columnist Rachel Peden. "The serene philosophy of the pink rose is steadying. Its fragrant, delicate petals open fully and are ready to fall without regret or disillusion after only a day in the sun. It is so every summer. One can almost hear their pink, fragrant murmur as they settle down upon the grass. Summer, summer, it will always be summer." And here's a quote from the English-American novelist Frances Hodgson Burnett from her book The Secret Garden. "Where you tend a rose, my lad, a thistle cannot grow." And here's a poem from the Cuban poet Jose Marti called A White Rose. "I have a white rose to tend in July as in January. I give it to the true friend who offers his frank hand to me, and for the cruel one whose blows break the heart by which I live, thistle nor thorn do I give. For him too I have a white rose." Then finally, here's a poem called The Rose by the English poet Christina Georgina Rossetti. "The lily has a smooth stalk, will never hurt your hand, but the rose upon her briar is lady of the land. There's sweetness in an apple tree and profit in the corn, but lady of all beauty is a rose upon a thorn. When with moss and honey she tips her bending briar and half unfolds her glowing heart, she sets the world on fire. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Gardener's Book by Diana Craig. This book came out in 2013, and the subtitle is Age-Old Advice and Tips for the Garden. In their review of this book, Amateur Gardening said, buried among the tongue-in-cheek tips, gardening quotations, and fascinating facts aimed at making you the envy of the allotment, there are some real nuggets of information that will benefit even the most green-fingered gardener. This book is 160 pages of tips, ideas, anecdotes, and inspiration for gardeners. You can get a copy of The Gardener's Book by Diana Craig and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $12. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today is the 35th anniversary of the death of the botanist and Northwestern University professor Marjorie Claire Carlson, who died on this day in 1985. In 1916, Marjorie was the first woman to major in botany at Northwestern. Later, she earned a PhD in botany, and then she became the first full-time female professor at Northwestern. During the 1930s, she was featured in many newspapers for her work with orchids. One popular article from 1936 said that Marjorie was working on making orchids possible to grow in the average man's garden. 2 years later, another article shared her unique approach to raising orchids in bottles. Marjorie was trialing different ways of feeding the orchids, growing them in specific food-based cultures like carrots, beets, tobacco, sugar, or even beef extracts. Now, Marjorie and her partner, Kate Staley, went on several expeditions together to South and Central America. Marjorie's obituary said the two were used to traveling by ox, truck, and airplane through and over dense jungles. Marjorie was always on the lookout for orchids and other rare species. In 1948, on one of her expeditions alone, she gathered over 4,000 specimens and discovered 15 new plant species. Marjorie commented that during her many travels, she was never afraid of snakes because they made so much noise cutting through the jungle with their machetes that she always scared the snakes away. Marjorie was born and raised in Illinois, and her parents, John and Nellie, helped chart her destiny. They named her after the Marguerite daisy, Marjorie Claire Carlson. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.